Hey, this is Dante, and this is going to be a video on PBO, new Pokemon MMO. For people who don't know me, I'm a very experienced Pokemon player. I've been playing competitive since 2009. I'm a big community figure in Poke1, admin one of the PvP servers, host a lot of tournaments, etc., etc. I've played pretty much every Pokemon MMO that's come out. I have over 500 hours in PPO, Pro, PokemonMMO. I have like 1,500 hours or something in P1. I've been high ladder on Showdown, etc., etc. I have a lot of experience in this stuff. I was a high-level BDO player. I have a near-maxed OSRS account. I play WoW. I've played like so many free-to-play MMOs. I'm a hardcore gamer, I guess you could say, for a bit of a cringy term. So I'm pretty interested in like game design overall. Specifically, I guess, from a kind of player perspective, not really from a developing perspective. So that's going to be how I'm going to approach this video. And I guess we'll start off with the major issues I have with PBO. I got two more things, actually, as kind of just preliminarily. This is not a video that's meant for any malicious intent or to be like a takedown of the developers. It's not to insult anyone, and if I say that something is stupid or doesn't work or is terrible, etc., etc., I'm mostly being hyperbolic or trying to explain how I feel about something rather than have it be an indictment on whoever created it. Okay, there's that. Also, some people probably know me from some of my antics on Discord or maybe voice chat or streaming. I'll just ask you to kind of divorce whatever preconceived notions or biases you have about me for this video, and just kind of listen to my arguments and what I'm saying. Okay, so let's get on to like the most important thing about MMOs, specifically Pokemon MMOs, which is basically player retention and having rewarding activities for the game. So there's kind of two ways to look at this. There's, players keep playing a game because either they enjoy the progress or they enjoy the end result, right? Now, ideally, you can reach two of these things, but most games, it's pretty hard to have both something that is super rewarding at the end and is enjoyable to get to that end point, right? Usually, you trade one off for the other. If you can find a balance between those two things, then it's great. Otherwise, you usually have to sacrifice one for the other. So, for example, if you look at a game like old school RuneScape, most people don't actually enjoy clicking on tiles for hundreds of hours, but a lot of people really do enjoy either doing endgame content or being able to flex their skill capes or just enjoy the mindless grind, etc. Or with WoW, a lot of people don't really enjoy the leveling process, but a lot of people do really love endgame raids. You guys get the idea. So, just from, and I'm talking very broadly right now, just from a general kind of gaming perspective, I think that you really need to focus on one of these two things, but you also can't sacrifice one too much for the other, because player retention is basically the single most important aspect of any game. It's really easy to get people to try a game, especially a free-to-play game. It's extraordinarily hard to get them to keep playing it or have them play it, finish the game or play it to the end. People will always quit, obviously, but it's more about being able to appeal to the most amount of people that you could realistically have as endgame players. So, for example, right now in PBO, there's a large group of players that have reached endgame and are, experienced Pokemon players from other MMOs that are playing it, right? This is the group of people that you should be looking at the most to who you can like convert, right? Because they're going to be like almost the best barometer in a way of the type of people, or of the potential success of the game, right? If you have people coming from all the other Pokemon MMOs and they actually prefer to play this for whatever reason, then it's a pretty good indication that you're doing a lot of things right, because you're basically somehow incentivizing them to switch to something new long term. So, but if you're only getting people from one type of game or one certain type of game, that could be an indication of maybe just some kind of emulation, which it seems like could be the case with PBO, but maybe not. And that's kind of where the vision of the creator, Snakes, is kind of the most important. Because PBO can really go into a few directions. I mean, you can go in the kind of best of type of game X, you know? So this could either be the best of a super grindy game, or this could be the best Pokemon MMO around and could appeal to a large group of people. But the thing is, it all comes down to, you know, what is appealing for Snakes. His vision for the game and what he wants out of it is really what's going to determine a lot of this stuff. And I'm speaking very broadly here intentionally because I think it's important to kind of understand the ideology and kind of objectives of a developer of a game. Because expecting a game to be something that isn't is, you know, the folly of a lot of players. You know, there's no point in trying to force your vision of a game on a developer who doesn't want to develop a game in that direction. And so I think if Snakes is forward about his ideas for the game and his direction for the game, it gives a lot of clarity and is very fair to the players who are interested in continuing. Okay, so let's talk about the nitty-gritty, why people are really here, of PBO, not my ideologies on game design, etc. Currently, PBO has 2, 3, maybe 4 major issues. But most people haven't encountered these yet because they're not really completely through the game. The first we'll start with, in I guess chronological order in a way, is going to be the leveling and difficulty scaling of the game. I think difficulty scaling is completely whack. There's basically 2 major breakpoints early in the game, which is the 3rd and the 5th gym. I think the majority of people are going to quit at those 2 blocking points. If you can get past the 5th gym, I have a pretty high degree of certainty that you'll complete the game at some point. But I think a lot of people are going to be quitting before that. And so I think that the difficulty scaling should definitely be fixed because you basically want the most amount of people to experience as much of the game as possible before they leave, right? And so by gating off so much of the content in the early game, such as, you know, if you get stuck at Crasher, you experience what, like 1/20th of what the game really has to offer, and you don't even really get to experience all the positives of the game. So I think changing the difficulty scaling to make the 5th gym much easier, and then maybe make 6, 7, 8, because these gyms are almost a complete joke. Increase the difficulty scaling slightly on these, make the 5th easier, and then the 3rd gym I think maybe just needs a complete rework. Obviously the specifics of these changes need to be really looked at, but I think broadly speaking the 3rd and 5th gym need to be tuned down, and I think maybe the 7th gym and the 6th gym should be tuned up slightly. The Elite Four, the main issue with the Elite Four is mostly the AI, and this is kind of something that I don't know. Thematically, some of the teams have some issues, but overall, I think the AI is just going to be the biggest barrier to making that more difficult, just because there's only so much you can do without, you know, with optimizing a team before you kind of just figure out what the AI is going to do each turn. Which is currently the case. I was the first person to basically complete most of the content in the game. I was the first person to beat 6, 7, 8, and the Elite Four. I was the first person to get into this cave. I did a lot of explored the game before a lot of other people and had to figure things out for myself. And it was mostly just due to trial and error. Once I figured out the AI, and I had done some early planning in the game just based off, you know, my knowledge of Sinnoh and Pokemon in general about what I wanted to do. But once I figured that stuff out, it was very smooth sailing for the most part, and just trying to figure, you know, some small kinks out. Once I found out like the teams of each of the Elite Four members, it became pretty easy to strategize how to complete it. Okay, so that's the number one. The difficulty scaling and appealing to players is probably the biggest thing. The second thing is the grinding. Now, I actually love to grind. I'm an absolute grind machine. I love grind-based games. The games I play the most are extremely, extremely grindy. The problem is, currently, the grinds in the game are extremely unfulfilling. There's no safety net, and there's basically no real light at the end of the tunnel for, you know, legit players. I mean, you can make the same. There's no the progress I can make in 20 hours could be made in 1 hour based off just getting lucky, right? And there's no real way to make up for that. Currently, grinding really gives very minimal money. EXP isn't particularly useful, and the UR rate is so low, and the systems in the game are so bad that even with a sync, you know, the chances of you getting a good Pokemon are incredibly, incredibly low. The actual UR/SR rate of finding Pokemon, I actually think is fine. I actually really like it to be really difficult to find some Pokemon. The problem is, there's no way, if you get the good Pokemon, to ensure that it will be good, right? So, I'm hunting for a Gible right now, right? So, let's just think about it. Let's just say it's, I don't know the actual rates. Let's just say it's 1 in 5,000 to find a UR, right? So, we're at 1 in 5,000. Then let's just say we have a sync, right? Which is 30% chance, right? So, now we have a 30% chance of getting the ideal nature that we want. Let's just say Jolly, right? So, we're at 1 in 5,000. Then we're at 1 in 3, let's say. And then we have another 1 in 31 roll to get 31 speed, which is going to be, you know, the ideal, you know, number that you're looking for on a Garchomp. And so think about all the factors that have to go right, and that's for one Pokemon on one team. How many hours of grinding on average would you have to do to get that? I mean, it's absolutely absurd and just completely unrealistic, and kind of unfair to the players in a way that I think is hard to explain, especially for the PvP players. There's basically like no reason for why, if my goal is to PvP, I should play this game, because currently, and this isn't even talking about because I'll save it for maybe another video, I don't want this to go too long, all the PvP item issue, which is a massive issue in the game, and some other stuff that I think are other massive barriers for the PvP community. But let's just talk about the encounter rates and mostly getting good Pokemon, because I think that's kind of the main focus of what people care about when they play Pokemon MMOs. There's no safety net currently. The chances of finding something good are abysmally low, and there's no way to reset IVs. And this is the absolute issue. You need to change, like, basically 2 of these 3 things need to change. Either increase the sync rate, increase the spawn rate, or create a way to change IVs. And I basically think the best way to alleviate this issue is increase the sync rate and change the way you do IVs. Because if you increase the spawn rate, it's more of like I feel like you're going to end up in a situation where it either becomes too easy or doesn't actually fix the issue and just kind of is like a slight alleviation, right? Almost like putting a band-aid on a gaping wound, so to speak. In a full IV reroll system, I don't really think is ideal. I think that you really need a bottle cap system. This is something that Mike and I have spoken about quite a bit. And you know, I'm in a lot of ways referencing Mike's forum post in a lot of ways in this video, because he kind of speaks to a lot of these issues in maybe a more concise way. So what would a bottle cap solution look like for PBO? Which is basically what I think would be the best. Bottle caps in the current game basically set any IV to 31, right? In PBO, however, this seems kind of broken, right? That you would be able to get any Pokemon perfect. A pretty easy solution in my mind would be to cap the amount of stats that you could get to 31 on a Pokemon using bottle caps. Let's just say you could only use 2 bottle caps per Pokemon, okay? Now, this basically makes it so that you do not need to get 31 speed on competitive Pokemon, because you can always use a bottle cap. It would mean that you wouldn't need to get 31 HP randomly on a Pokemon that, you know, on something like Suicune, for example, that wants to substitute with 100 base HP, I should add. You know, 31 attack, so you could get max rolls. Having the ability to always get 31 speed, 31 attack, 31 HP, or even 0. Let's just say you could have 31 or 0, so you could get 0 speed on things, because that's quite important as well. Basically, completely opens up the door for allowing like almost every Pokemon you find with the right nature to being somewhat competitive, right? And this basically makes it so you now only need the 1 in 5,000, the 1 in 30%, which I still think should be 50%. I think 30% is much too low. I think that needs to change as well. And then you basically are then limited by whatever bottle caps you have, which would obviously have its own cost and ways to get. And there's about a billion ways you could add to get bottle caps. You could even make them untradeable. You can make them, maybe you get, you know, one for completing the story, maybe you could get one a week from doing certain missions. They should be fairly accessible, but still in demand, right? Which is to say, you shouldn't have so many bottle caps you're just using them on every Pokemon. They should really be saved for the URs, you know, things that are special. Their value should be, you know, kept, but they should be obtainable. It shouldn't take you 4 weeks to get one bottle cap. You know, I think something like getting 1 to 2 bottle caps a week on average for, let's just say, someone playing 20 hours a week, because I mean, I would say most like average, you know, gamers, hardcore gamers can play something between like 10 to 20 hours of gaming a week. Not like super hardcore players, but you know, average people who are interested in playing the game. So let's just say it takes 10 hours to get one bottle cap. I think that's like a pretty fine rate. Like ideally, in terms of PvP teams, I don't think it should take longer than something like maybe 80 to 100 hours of in-game play time, ideally, to make your first PvP team. Basically anything more than that, and you're just gating off the game to like 90% of players, even people who are willing to play. Most people are not going to invest huge amounts of time into a game that has no real potential reward. I don't want this video to go on too long. I've already kind of said, I guess, the bulk of my initial thoughts on the major issues with the game. Overall, I really like the grinding. And let's just talk about the positives now. We'll just end the video on a high note. I think the game has enormous potential. I think a lot of the systems in the game are great. The fast battling is awesome. The crew system is the best I've seen in any PvP game besides the size, or any PokemonMMO besides the size of the crews. Crew War sounds super cool, especially if you add eventually like a full just head-to-head Crew War mode. The Trade House, it's great to have, even if the functionality isn't perfect. I think that the dev team is super good so far, and the staff are all really nice. Shout out to Prison and Amy especially. I feel like they're doing an awesome job and really interacting with the community. I mean, I just think the community in general is pretty good so far. There's a lot of really good PvP players from other games around, and I think the future could be really bright. I just think that the issue is the systems in the game are really not player friendly at all. They're basically anti-player. They almost incentivize me to not play the game. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no safety net. There's no reason for me to want to grind. Because basically, it's just it just feels like an endless, hopeless grind of maybe you get lucky or maybe you can scam some noob for a good Pokemon that he has. I really feel strongly that you need some way to ensure that players can, you know, get things that are good that they want in a reasonable manner. Overall, I think that having a vision for the game is super important, and I hope that it kind of coincides with maximizing the game to the most amount of people rather than catering to a really small community, which is my worry about the game. That this, instead of aiming to be the best possible PokemonMMO, this is aiming to be an improved version of Pokemon Planet, for example. So that's most of what I have to say about the game. My dog's getting quite restless. This was a bit scatterbrained, and I wasn't as concise as I would like to be, so if anyone has questions or disagrees with me, I'd be happy to continue the conversation, and I may make a longer forum post with some of my ideas, maybe in a more concise format, but I think Mike summed it up nicely on the forums. I just wanted to make a video kind of expressing my thoughts. I had told people I would do this. You know, this didn't end up as efficient as I would like it to have been, and there's a lot more I kind of want to say, but I don't want this to go on too long, and so we'll save it for the future. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.